What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the Joel Friday TV podcast. I am Joel Friday. Bienvenido. Welcome to the show. It is Thursday, my last day of the week, but we're here. Do me a favor before we get started, hit that like button, smack it, lay the smack down on like, subscribe, and share button. Tell your peoples about the show so we get the subscribers up and the message out. Do it now. You still got time. Topics to be covered. What are we getting into today, Joel? Let me tell you. We're going to talk about the gays, the trans, the autistic, the ADHD, the ADDs, all the titles. We're getting into it today. We are getting into it today and what that means and all that stuff. So I have some things I want to share with you guys, and I think it's going to be pretty interesting. So tell your peoples about the show so that way they can tune in and not miss it, okay? For whatever reason, let's just say you want to talk about the conversation or you want to disagree or argue. You can do that because it is a talk show by going to 888-775-3773, and we can get into it. We can fight, we can agree, we can disagree. Oh, shoot. We can fellowship. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to do a bunch of things at once here. Whatever you want to do, we can do it all in the name of Jesus, right? Give me a second, guys, here. Sorry. He black. 888-775-3773. What's going on, Instagram? I'm trying to be able to see Instagram chat at the same time, so I'm working on it right now. Boom. Okay. So you can call in at 888-775-3773. If for whatever reason you cannot call in, but you still have a question or comment, or you just want to support the show, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/JoelFridayTV. Click the link in the description, and it'll take you straight there. And there you can send your question or comments, and I'll read them live on air. Or you can go straight to the live chat right here on YouTube and click the super chat button and do it there, right? You can send a donation with a question or comment, and I will read them live on air, and we can get into it. Those are pretty fun. So, and I appreciate the support thus far. So, yeah, good stuff. What's going on, IG? What's going on, YouTube chat? How y'all doing? How's it going, mods? Are my mods doing all right? Nice. Hold it down, mods. And C-Sal and Kaya, don't be afraid to mod them boys. The boys acting up. I mean, not mod, but put them on timeout. Them boys acting up, C-Sal, put them on timeout. You know. So, right on. Let's get to it. Because I got some things I want to get to today. Possibly some clips as well. And we're just going to have a fun show. So, I was just thinking, because I had a conversation with Hassan a little bit, and we were talking about, like, polygamy and all these different things and like what those things mean. And then it made me start thinking about other things, right? Like other categories that people tend to put themselves in, like polygamists. And then you have the one we know that's very well known, LGBTQ, their community, the gay community, the trans community, the autistic community, the Tourette's community, all these things, right? All these different communities. And I was just thinking like, wow, that's crazy how all these are defined by these titles, right? And I feel like regardless of what's going on with the person, these titles and categories that we place, I think do more harm than good. And I'm going to present some information to you guys, and you can let me know what you think, and you draw your own conclusion, right? So this is my thing. This is what I believe. When you give it a name, you give it a home, okay? That's going to be like the thread of my whole show today. When you give it a name, you give it a home, okay? So the first thing I want to get into is the gays, right? The word gay, the homosexual community, right? Back then, just a little bit of like history. I'm just going to give a little bit of history about it that I looked into and I did some research on, and I want to share a little bit. Back then, when it was known that you were gay, like back in like either JOP's times or even before then, since the beginning of time, when it was known that you were gay, it wasn't called gay, right? It was like known as like, the terms they put it back then was like if a man and a man laid together, or a woman and a woman laid together. That's how they didn't put any titles on it. They just said it like that. But back then when that was happening, the person knew something was wrong, and the people around them knew something was wrong. So they would go get help because they were confused, right? They didn't know what was going on. They were confused. So they would seek out help back then. And back then, when they would seek out help, they would call the pastor. They would call the preacher, because they knew something spiritually was going on wrong. Something was wrong spiritually. So they would call the pastor or preacher. They didn't call the doctor. They called the pastor or the preacher, oftentimes, right? And they knew something was going on, and something had to be something was going on mentally and spiritually, right? So that's what happened. And then they would go through the process of like overcoming it, or just understanding it possibly better, right? And that's what it used to be. And then they never identified with it as them, right? Even the straight people, even the people who were straight back in the day, the heterosexuals, they never identified as straight. Like you don't see, even today, you don't really see people walking around like proudly saying straight, right? It just is what it is. It's just a thing. But what I think changed back then was when people really started identifying with what they were going through, was when they were confused, and out of their confusion, instead of seeking answers, they just fell victim to admitting that it was just who they are. This is just me. You know, they gave up trying to overcome it because they didn't know how to, and they just became subject to it. This is just me. This is just who I am, right? And when that happened, obviously, as we all know, anytime anybody becomes subject to these things, it's because there's a lack of guidance, right? So whether it be lack of the father being in the home, lack of a father in the home being a good example, like propaganda from society, societal pressure, all these different things play a part, right? But I think also back then in the church, they would condemn these type of people as well, right? These people who were having these issues, because in the Bible it says that when two men lay together, two women lay together, it's abomination, right? But I think that there were some Christians that took that out of context and used it as a weapon against these people, and those people who were feeling those things rebelled. That's what I think partly had to do with it too. But confusion became an identity. But still at that point, even though people were identifying with it, they were still on the edge of, it was still in secret, right? It was still kind of a low-key thing, and you weren't really like public about it because you were embarrassed, right? You knew for whatever reason you may have accepted it as who you are, but yet you still didn't want to go in the public and and deal with that, right? And so you dealt with your issues in secret. But it wasn't until, and I'm gonna brush through this information I'm gonna give you guys. But it wasn't until July 11th, 1983, that I believe is where like Satan really planted his feet in this whole push for this for this LGBTQ community to really impose this lifestyle on the world. I'm going to read this article that I got from Seattle.gov, okay? And so in 1983, there was the AIDS epidemic. Do you guys know about the AIDS epidemic? Yeah? No? He said, David Singleton says, July, that can't be right. In 1983, there was an AIDS epidemic, and it started in Seattle. And the first case was in 1982, right? And by 1989, which was what, 7 years later, there was 1,000 cases, right? So over a 7-year period, there was 1,000 cases of AIDS, right? And the Seattle County Department of Public Health found that the AIDS diagnosis given was 94% was by gay and bisexual men. Nationwide, homophobia and lack of support for the Ronald Reagan administration resulted in almost non-existent AIDS relief. And the administration silenced about the epidemic during the first years of his presidency cost the country many lives and thousands of dollars in federal funds, blah, 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 blah. Pat Buchanan, his communication of directors, described AIDS as a nature's revenge on gay men. And by 1987, nearly 21,000 Americans had died from AIDS, right? So long story short, 1982, AIDS came into existence, and the government refused to pay for any type of health care for those who had AIDS because at that time, gay and all that stuff was not accepted by the public, and it was seen as an abomination, and it wasn't catered to, right? But what happened was the city of Seattle and King County were some of the earliest jurisdictions in the nation to set aside funding for AIDS treatment and research. And then San Francisco jumped on the movement and decided to do funding for it as well. As the impact of AIDS grew, the Seattle King County Department of Health saw the need for a program to provide education, referral, and counseling services and to contribute to the AIDS research. Community activists from organizations such as blank, 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 together with other organizations, developed a proposal program that included a hotline for people who had who were dealing with AIDS. And on July 11, 1983, a declared state of emergency. Hold on, guys. On July 11, 1983, the health department declared a state of emergency and appropriated emergency funding for the program's establishment. Sorry, y'all, for reading that so messy. So basically, they declared a state of emergency and funding for the program was established. So that's when I feel like things started changing, was when they were able to convince the government to pay for the AIDS epidemic, right? And not that it was like this crazy, insane thing, like helping people who are in trouble or like who had this disease, right? But that was the start of where they started like the government started really like getting weaker and weaker and weaker when it comes to LGBTQ stuff, right? Because after that, they were like, no, we want more. We want more. And then they had gay civil rights, quote unquote, right? They had all these things. And then what that did was just make people accept the abnormal as normal more and more and more. So then these titles became big, mainstream, gay, trans, lesbian, all these things became like staples into our culture and community because of like this push from average citizens and this like protest, this activism against the government, and the government got weak and said, okay, we'll let you in. So although in their mind they're thinking that, oh, we're making progress, what it did was make people identify with something that they shouldn't be identifying with in general. So I say all that to say that it was a mistake to have these titles and categories of people, of gay and trans and all these things. These are things straight, even the word straight. All these things are things that we are dealing with, right? Spiritually, right? This confusion. And instead of working them out in secret like we should do, we ended up identifying with it. And the reason why the government let it is because nobody put the foot down and said, no, this is not who you are. You're not a straight man. You're not a gay man. Child of God is who you are. But they didn't say that. They were like, oh, maybe he is gay. Maybe that just is who he is. Maybe he really is just a girl. Maybe she is just a man in a mind. And maybe she just was put in the wrong body. That's the type of thinking and attitude that makes people accept things that aren't real, and it actually makes them suffer even further. Because it's a confusion, it's a delusion. And nobody stepped in and said no, because no men actually were living like that. We're living tough, strong, noble. Maybe there was a few, right? But nobody was putting their foot down. Fathers weren't there. Good examples weren't around. The Christian church was judging people instead of loving people. The Catholic Church, all of that. And that's where the problems came in. But we didn't stop there. Oh, no, we didn't stop at the gay, trans, and lesbian. We didn't do that. We didn't stop there. We went to autism. We went to all these different things. Now, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to say that there's not other things that may be going, other conditions. But there is a spiritual part to autism that is not talked about and not acknowledged. And I want to get into that really quick. And I have a clip that I'm going to play as well about it. But I noticed over time as well that when it comes to autistic people or people that are on the spectrum, is that they tend to identify with themselves as less than or different than society, right? Less than. And that identity makes you feel like a victim. You always are going to feel like you're not enough. You're always going to feel like something's wrong with you. And it comes down to the way the parents raised you, the way they pushed you to identify yourself as, and the way society says that looks down upon these things. They should never give it a name. If they have a problem, a mental problem or a spiritual problem or a medical problem, stop putting these titles. And if you have an autistic child, don't call him autistic. Call him a regular child. Because, yeah, maybe he has to work a little bit harder to like function normally, but let him work a little bit harder to function normally. Because he stops working or she stops working when you tell them it's because you're autistic, you're on the spectrum. Now you just defeated the child. They did that to me when I was younger. They tried to tell me I had ADHD, ADD. But thankful that my mom was like, and they were like, put him on these pills. My mom was like, nope. I could never focus in school. I always got bad grades. I got a 3.0 one time in 6th grade, and my whole family celebrated. I think we went to Disneyland. And we were so proud of me. 3.0 one time in 6th grade. Every other time, D's, F's, C's. But it wasn't because I had ADD. It was because my father wasn't around. I couldn't focus. I was always in my thoughts. I was always in my feelings. My attention span was all over the place. I had no discipline. That's what it was. It wasn't ADD. You know what I mean? And if they would have gave me pills, I would have been walking around like a zombie. All kinds of side effects to those pills. And now you're addicted. Now you got to live with. It's just a mess. So we got to stop giving it all titles. I know we got to speak. I know we got to talk. We got to conversate and stuff like that and call certain things. But we got to really be careful with that because ain't nobody gay, ain't nobody trans, ain't nobody straight, ain't none of that. That's not real. It's made up things that it's all from evil. Evil's plan is to make you identify and build a home. When you give it a name, you give it a home. And that's what Satan wants. He wants to plant his feet in these false identities so he has control over you. So I'm going to play a quick clip. Let me pull it up. And then I want you guys to, and then I'll get to some of your guys' comments here. And don't forget, you can call in 888-775-3773. And we could talk about the topic at hand. But let me go to, hold on, let me see. Who's this? Boom. Okay, so this clip here that I'm about to play is from let's see if it'll let me play it. It's an autistic child, a couple mothers trying to deal with their autistic child and like different like approaches they've gone about it in order to like properly deal with the autistic child. So I'm going to play that and let's just see what you guys think about it.
Stop. Calm. Ow! Let go! Stop. Let go! Stop. Let you go! Stop. Calm. Stop. I can't! Unavailable. Thank you. Let go. Let go. No. Reset. Relax.
Okay, I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. As you guys can see, it was like these autistic kids, like being aggressive with the mother. In the black community, that would never happen. Autistic, whatever it is, whatever you Tourette's, whatever you got. Oh, you ain't doing that to a black mother, black father. And the white homes, the white kids cuss at their parents, they hit them, smack them. That ain't got nothing to do with autism. That's everything to do with catering and being soft and being weak with their children. Has nothing to do with autism. I guarantee, because people are afraid to be tough on the autistic people or the Down syndrome people. People are afraid to treat them normal. But every ounce of their soul and being and spirit is yearning for someone to treat them normal. Facts. Begging for somebody to treat them normal. So if the parent were to just, the father were to raise his voice and be like, whatever he needs to say in that moment. Calm down. That authority of the man and women are supposed to have authority over their children as well. So a woman can say it if she has the right authority as well. But the autistic child would know. I'm not hitting. And they think that that's a symptom of autism. They swing and hit to be aggressive. And maybe it is of the way, I don't know. But it still can be checked. You don't have to like count to 3, massage his arms. You know what I mean? Like, no. Discipline. I'm probably going to get demonetized for all this mess talking. But it's the truth. Discipline. Authority will put all that in check. I seen a Down syndrome girl, and I was trying to cut the clip up so I could show you guys. But I didn't have time to get to it. There's a Down syndrome girl on TikTok where she looks like a Down syndrome girl on everything. Full blown look. You know how they kind of have that look? But her attitude, like she like is a normal girl. And she was like arguing with her sister, and it's a funny video, and she's actually pretty popular on TikTok. But she looked like a normal girl. Like she acted like a normal girl. She looked Down syndrome, but acted like a normal girl, right? Like normal teenager problems. And she's always saying that she's gonna fight people, but she's joking around, right? It's just funny. It's a funny thing. But the point is, I guarantee the mother, or the father or whatever, does not treat them less than everybody else. And that's why she can go about her life as normally as possible and speak normally and do these things. For the most part, right? Because like I said, I'm not a medical professional. But if she can do it, it's doable. But we weaken people by catering to them because we think that they're mentally ill or they're this and this and that. And those things could be true, but you don't want to be weak with people. All people, all things, animals, people, whatever. Admire and are subservient to strength. crave and desire strength. So I don't know. It just made me think about all that stuff. And I'm gonna get to the polyamory thing in a second, because that's a mess too. And this is just Joel's thoughts. You don't gotta agree, but you can call in 888-775-3773 and we could talk about it. Let me just check here before I get to some calls. Let me ask with 3 donuts says, whatever happened to hot computer smell from JLP chat room, the good old days? Oh yeah, I forgot about hot computer smell. I don't know what happened. I don't know. That's a good question. But thanks for the super chat. Yeah, hot computer smell used to be a frequent listener and caller into, I think, James' show as well. Throwback. Anyways, what are you guys saying in the chat here? Hake says, hot computer smell is cool. I know some of these people get doxxed and have to protect their identity. Oh. Lin Yan Chin says, growth comes through pain, be it the growing pain of puberty or the smacking pain that black mothers use to put their children in line. Though they do it too much and it breaks the child into a clone. Yeah, you don't want to do it too much, but sometimes that discipline is necessary because it puts them in check. If you give them everything all the time and you're just spoiling that nature and it never grows. And it weakens the person. That's why these little dogs that be walking around, these little dogs are so weak looking because they're treated like children in a stroller. They got shoes and shirts. They got all these things, and it's actually making the dog's nature weaker. Mr. Pink says, Joel about to have a Wikipedia link that defines autism. No. I just like to talk about the spiritual aspect of things because I've seen it in my life and I've seen them try to tell me what I was and they were clueless. So I'm just speaking on the spiritual perspective. The medical side, I know nothing about. So that's why I'm not fully embracing that the autism thing and the Down syndrome thing is only a spiritual thing, which I think plays a big part. But I'm not 100% that that's entirely the problem. So I'm just YouTube. You heard me say it. I'm not entirely saying that. Tar Baby Yoda says, Joel, come on, man. What? The White Shadow says, I have 2 Down kids and an autistic nephew. I know after living it almost 27 years. I lived it. You know what, the White Shadow? From your experience, are you agreeing with me or are you disagreeing? I can't tell. Call in if you can, but if not, just send a message. been through. Okay, Joel. The White Shadow says Joel is not right. Okay. Be fit to be fit. Says Down syndromes have extra chromosomes, dude. Almost not even human. Fair enough. Call in and explain. But I'm not entirely wrong. I'll tell you that. I'm not entirely wrong. I am not entirely wrong. There's definitely a big spiritual part that has to do with all of these things that are not talked about. So, Hake says, yeah, but they could be made to be more human and more normal by not being spoiled. That's the point I'm trying to make. But there are some things that aren't medical, full spiritual. So Zenny says the spiritual world is the foundation of the physical world. It's all related. Okay, let me get to some calls. Let me talk to Rick, a first-time caller out of Ohio. Rick, welcome to the show. You're on the air.
Hey, Joel. How are you today, sir?
All is well. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Hey, I am the White Shadow.
Nice.
And I wanted to call in and let you know just some experience.
Appreciate it.
As far as I got, almost 27 years ago, my wife got pregnant, and after we had our first ultrasound, they were taking all the measurements in the ultrasound. And it was one of those weird days where they didn't really talk to us too much, so we kind of thought something was wrong. And, they ended up finding out that our daughter had Down syndrome, and she also had another condition genetically that was causing her to swell up with amniotic fluid inside of her body, heart tissue, skin tissue, body cavity, that kind of stuff, swelling up from the inside out. And we were told that she was not going to live to birth. And we had multiple visits for the doctor, drawing blood through the placenta, blood vessels, and things like that. That was a little difficult because when she was born, she was 7 weeks early and spent 50 days in the intensive care unit on an oxygen tube. And for 21 days, she never even got held by a human being. So there are a lot of things that go into being a baby and getting that attention and affection.
I agree.
And long story short, she had a heart defect. At 6 months of age, had open heart surgery and ended up being in the hospital for a month because of an infection. And it was a journey for us that was extremely difficult, very physically and mentally trying to be in and out of the hospital. I had actually had an injury where I had a broken leg at the time, right before she was born. So that was an added thing. But 4 years later, we had a son. He also had Down syndrome.
Wait, so
the same heart.
Sorry, just
heart
really
defect.
quick. So the first child that went through this whole process, they end up having Down syndrome?
My first child, yes, had Down syndrome, yeah.
Okay, and okay, finish.
Okay, so then 4 years after she was born, my wife was pregnant again, and we had a son. He also had Down syndrome, and he also had the same heart defect.
Okay.
So, but his health condition was probably 1,000 times better than my daughter's, and he was very strong. Some of the other conditions weren't present. He wasn't swelling up with fluid. But he did have a heart surgery at 6 months old. He did not have to have oxygen. Like I said, he's much stronger. The long story short, after we were divorced and she ended up being pregnant again, that baby also had Down syndrome, but it was miscarried. And so after researching her, she researched, and there's a genetic MTHFR genetic thing that causes this to happen more readily. And, that is part of something. But the genetics that go into Down syndrome with the extra chromosomes, they do cause a lot of issues. The physical characteristics, the eyes, the hands are different. They have different metabolism. They can't absorb certain things the same. They need more enzymes. And they are developmentally delayed. That doesn't mean that they're stupid. My daughter is very, very astute at knowing pop stars and musicians, and she knows who's in the movies. She's like grounded herself in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
But she can tell you a lot of stuff about a lot of things, and she can read, and she's funny. My son, he's a little more delayed in the communication, and 99% of the time, you just do want to treat them like a normal person. And it's just when you know that there's things going on related to the illness, related to their Down syndrome, related to what they have going on, that you don't necessarily treat them the same. You've got to be different with them. And, I just think that a generalization without understanding what all goes through it, and like the lady you showed with her son, you just really can't tell what goes on 24/7. Now, my autistic nephew has run out of the house butt naked at 4 years old to the neighbor's house, walked straight in the garage, and went right in the house. I mean, this was a common occurrence for a short period of time. He would pee in every open vessel in the house. He drilled holes in the car with a cordless drill. He climbed a water tower, at the local ball diamond without anyone knowing where he was. And it's like those kinds of adventures are like, that's something else. And, there's a term that I've been hearing that applies to this in a way, that the autism is dissociation. They do not live in the world we perceive. It's like there's something going on in the brain. They're not with you.
Okay, let me chime in. Let me chime in really quick, just because of time here. I'm running out of time.
Yes, sir.
For one, I appreciate you calling in and giving all that information as well. Really quick, how old were you and the mother when you guys had the children, started having, if you don't mind saying?
No, I was 28 and she was 26.
Okay.
So it was very young.
Okay, so do you think when it comes to the behavior patterns, do you think because maybe let's just say, like, let's entertain, because I don't know, like the things that you broke down as far as the certain things that happened at the hospital that may have caused this thing to happen. Do you believe that certain behavior patterns can be adjusted by certain teachings or certain disciplines that maybe were not taught because of this, like, wanting to be understanding and compassionate to the person that is dealing with these things? Do you think that that's a possibility?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that.
So basically, say there's certain things, like you said, your nephew climbs he does all these things, right? Mm-hmm. Do you think that if the parents were to put that in check and to be hard on the child, even though they have to have this understanding, right? You should have an understanding, but be tough on the child and knowing that the things they can and can't do, that would be much better than allowing them to get away with these things just because they have been diagnosed with autism.
No, you're misunderstanding. They were never allowed to do these things. These are things they did without anyone authorizing, anyone okaying, anyone being, permissive.
Why though? Why though?
That's a good question. That's part of the mystery we don't understand having the cognitive ability to interact with another person is not the same.
And I get what you're saying, and I could be wrong too. Like, I get what you're saying, but I'm just trying to make sense of it, Because how do we? Because right now you're saying it's a mystery and it's a cognitive thing. So basically, you're calling it a cognitive thing. But how do we know that when they're behaving in this way, we can't course correct it by treating the child just like we would treat any other child that would do things like that, and not even considering the whole Down syndrome thing or the cognitive thing. You just discipline them as you see fit. Why are we
Right.
not doing that? Why do you think we
Well,
don't do that?
well, you have to attribute the behavior and what the behavior is to the reason the behavior is happening. Now, if you have physically have a variation of genetics in your body and in your mind operating. Now, one of the things that I do know about autistic children that has been known to me for some time, I read a book about getting your kids off pharmaceuticals, that things like gluten and different proteins, because of leaky gut syndrome, which may be vitamin deficiencies and things that haven't been discovered yet, but the leaky gut syndrome, gluten would go into the body and go through as leaky gut. The byproducts of the digestion would cause them to have an opiate experience where the children are literally getting high from eating bread.
But
you have behaviors of someone on drugs.
But that's also can be avoided. That also can be avoided. Drugs don't have no effect unless the mind tells it to. So the mind has to believe.
When you're a child,
right?
When you're a child, you can't, and you're not as verbal. You can't tell someone, "Hey,
I understand.
I feel funny."
You're right.
You know?
But that's why and I'm not, and this is just my belief, and I could be wrong about it, and I'm not trying to overstep, you having two children that that went through this. But I'm saying that, like, we as parents, it seems to me, have the authority to offset some of these things. And meaning that, like, let's just say, that their brain has this function that just wants to do this thing over aggressively we still, as human beings, can contain that and can teach the child that, in my belief, that this is not okay, or learn how to put them on a certain discipline to where they no longer are like hyper functioning in that way. But I think the whole idea of the doctor saying, well, this is Down syndrome, this is that, then we start to kind of like be soft around the edges and cater to it because them.
Okay. I never did. I never was, quote, soft on my kids.
Okay.
I disciplined them, and they were told what was not right and what was right and what was appropriate and not appropriate. With Down syndrome kids, my two kids, I had almost zero issues, with behaviors and things. The thing about autism, it's totally different. It's totally a different thing, one and the other. And, I don't know what the damage is done as far as autism, but I know that with Down syndrome, it's genetic, and there are genetic issues. And it's like anyone who has a certain type of genetic issues, you're going to have a stillbirth, or you're going to have, the body will reject the baby. And so that's one mechanism. But this is, they're both different. I always discipline my kids, and told them, hey, we're not going to do that. You're not allowed to do that. And, it was not easy, just like with any kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's never easy.
Well, I appreciate it, Rick. I got to wrap it up because of time here. But one thing I just want to say is this, and then you can obviously make your own distinction, is that they told me ADHD or ADD or whatever the case is was this thing in my brain, and that I had to be on these pills when I was younger. And let's just say that that's true, though. And I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying, let's just say that that's true. And maybe there's something in my brain that a chemical imbalance. Well, what I had to do is that, for one, realizing that for me, it was spiritually, there was a big spiritual thing that was missing, a big spiritual part that wasn't being enforced in my household, which has changed everything for me in the first place. But let's just say there's a chemical thing in my brain when it comes to ADD or whatever it is, then that's fine. But I still have to work. Then what I have to do is I got to work extra hard to make sure that I get that one little thing that's off in place by disciplining myself in a certain way. I can't identify with it, or else I'm not gonna think I can overcome it. Is
Right.
all I'm saying.
Right, and I believe you, because I have heard from psychologists that ADHD is made up to benefit the pharmaceutical industry. It is a
Right.
learned behavior to not keep your attention on something. So you have to learn to keep your attention on something to overcome it. And it's not necessarily chemical or
Okay.
physical or mental. You're a boy, you're hyper. That's all it is.
Right. And you're saying that it's possibly different for autism and Down syndrome, which I believe.
That's what yeah.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, Rick. I hate to rush you because it's such a good conversation. I'd love to know more.
No, I
but
appreciate you, man.
hopefully, call me again. I'm back here next Monday, so if you can and make sense, call me again. I appreciate it.
All right, right on. Thanks. And you guys are doing great. I appreciate you guys all.
Thanks, Rick. Bye. Man, I really wanted to go further into that, but I'm so out of time. Because there's so many questions that people are giving me now, and he called in the last 15 minutes. It's not, it's fine. But I'm all out of time, and somebody else, I have other callers that want to get to it. I got it in. American Anchor Baby's coming in. If you want to ask him questions about it, maybe he has a take on it. I don't know. But you guys can stay on the line if you want to just get in to a show and express your opinions. But I got to end. My time is up. You guys got to call a little bit earlier. But I'm gone. I'm not here tomorrow. I'm back on Monday for a new week of shows and topics. So I'll see you guys on Monday. Follow me across the board, Joel Friday TV. We just posted some new clips yesterday. Go like, share, and subscribe, all those. Until next time, I'll see you guys next week. Have a good weekend. Bye.